My daughter's imaginary friend has been visiting her every night for 3 weeks. His name is Daniel. He disappeared in 1987, and I know that because he was my imaginary friend first. I hadn't thought about Daniel in 30 years. Children invent companions, then they grow up and forget them. That's how it works. That's supposed to be how it works. It started when my daughter Mia began setting a third place at the dinner table. Kids do that. I didn't ask. Then one evening she told me his name without me asking, and the temperature in the room dropped in a way that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I told myself it was coincidence, a common name. Children absorb things, overheard conversations, old photographs, something half-remembered from a dream I'd described. There was always an explanation if I looked hard enough. Then Mia described his hands. She said Daniel has very long fingers, and he keeps them pressed flat against things, walls, windows, tabletops, like he's feeling for something underneath. She demonstrated, spreading her small hand against the kitchen table and pressing down slowly. She looked up at me when she did it and said, "He does it like this. He says he's checking if it's real." That's when I stopped being able to eat. I remembered those hands. I had described them to my mother when I was 6 years old, sitting at a table that no longer exists in a house that burned down in 1987. I had told her he pressed his hands against walls. She had told me he wasn't real.
I found my mother's box of photographs that same night. The house burned in November 1987. I was 7. Old enough to remember the smell, young enough that the adults decided I shouldn't be told how it started. I had always assumed accident. I had never looked at the photographs from that day. The last one in the stack stopped me. It was taken from the front yard. My uncle's camera, cheap film. My family was gathered on the lawn. The house was still standing, no smoke yet, which meant this was hours before anyone knew what would happen. In the upstairs window, my bedroom window, something was pressed against the glass. Tall, narrow, arms slightly too long, both hands flat against the pane, fingers spread, each one distinct through the old film grain. I had left for school that morning. I hadn't said goodbye. I put the photograph face down and went to check on Mia. She was asleep, nightlight on, stuffed rabbit under her arm. Everything ordinary, until I looked at the wall beside her bed. Handprints on the wallpaper, long fingers, 4 in a row, pressed flat, trailing from the headboard to the window, as if something had walked the length of her bed in the dark and dragged its hand along the wall to find its way. I took Mia to my room and locked the door. I sat on the floor with my back against it until morning. She woke at 6 a.m., fully, instantly, the way children do, and said without preamble, "Daniel says you saw the picture. He says he wanted you to." I asked why. She thought about it with the complete seriousness of a child delivering a message she doesn't fully understand. "He says you left without saying goodbye. He says he looked for you in the house for a long time. He didn't know you weren't coming back." I asked how long he looked. She held up both hands, fingers spread. "Until the fire went away," she said. I drove to the land the following week. Not the house, the land. The house had been replaced by something that belonged to people who had no idea what had stood there before, what had stayed there after. I sat in the car and looked at the upstairs window. It was just glass, just a frame. I felt nothing, which frightened me more than feeling something would have. I went home and sat across from Mia at the kitchen table. I asked about Daniel, carefully, the way you ask a question you already half know the answer to. She said he hadn't come the last 2 nights. I asked if he'd said anything before he stopped. He said he found what he was looking for.
She picked up her fork. He said he's not lost anymore. I thought about that after she went to bed. About a child who makes something real through belief. Real enough to press its hands against walls. Real enough to wait. Real enough to survive a fire because it had nowhere else to go. And about what happens when the person who made it real finally comes within reach. The handprints on Mia's wall came back after every coat of paint. I stopped painting over them. Last night I woke at 3 a.m. and lay still in the dark. Mia was asleep beside me. The room was quiet. Then, from the wall beside my head, I heard it. Slow, patient, deliberate. The sound of something pressing against the plaster from the other side. 4 fingers, one at a time, checking. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just said, very quietly into the dark, "I'm sorry, I didn't say goodbye." The pressing stopped, and something on the other side of the wall exhaled.